Hello crafty friends, this is the Papered Chef here. In today's Brother Scan and Cut Tips and Tricks tutorial, you are going to learn how to cut out stamped images using your SDX125 machine. You can follow along with whichever model of Scan and Cut you have. They will all do what I'm showing you. The stamp set I'm using is from the February 2021 Paper Pumpkin Kit by Stampin Up. The Paper Pumpkin Kit is called Bouquet of Hope. It's really nice for encouraging cards, thinking of you, I'm always here for you, and of course sympathy cards. One of the sentiments is sorry for your loss. But of course you can use whatever sentiments you would like with this floral bouquet we'll be cutting out because it's very versatile. Now in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you my pencil trick, which is it's a way of enclosing stamped images when you cut them out. So it's the bouquet that we're cutting is not this bouquet here that you see. That one's actually an embellishment. So let me show you that. And this is a nice embellishment that came in the kit. You get a few of these. So this is like a punch out. It's already pre-printed. But what's nice about this bouquet, it's good to watch this or look at this as inspiration for when you're coloring. So that's sort of how I did my coloring. I looked at that for some guidance on, and of course I always look at the coordinating colors as well on inside the kit when I get the kit. This is the stamp set we're actually going to be cutting out. So let me just put that right back on so you can start from the beginning here. So you see that every Paper Pumpkin kit comes with a stamp set. So this is the stamp set that came in this kit. Right? It's sorry for your loss. I'll always be here for you. And then a nice sentiment for the inside of the card. Sharing in your sorrow, thinking of you, and wishing I could be there to hold your hand. So these are really nice sympathy cards. But again, you can use this bouquet for any other kind of card. Even a birthday card would be nice on. So I'm going to take the Bouquet of Hope. I'm going to call it the Bouquet of Hope, right? This flowers. I'm taking it off of this mount. Now let me put this down so you can see what I'm about to teach you before we even talk about the stamp itself. One of the things, and let me go ahead and turn on my light. I'm going to turn on my light to teach you this, but I'm definitely turning it off for scanning purposes because when I scan, you don't want to have an extra light on going sideways into your machine because it could affect your scanning. So look at this image. And notice something. There are gaps. Like this little stamp here, it's a little island. I mean, it has gaps around it. It's by itself. It's not enclosed with the rest of the bouquet. This could get broken off, meaning it could get scanned by itself off to the side. Same with this little clump of flowers, this little clump. You want the bouquet to scan as one, so you need to trick the Scan and Cut into thinking this is one object, even though they're not quite connected. You need to connect them with the pencil. So that's what I'm going to show you in this tutorial. It's a very simple tutorial, and because I just got my Paper Pumpkin kit, mail is slow this time. I'm going to go ahead and mount this, by the way, onto a stamping block. You know, mail's slow. I just got my kit. I've only fully colored one of these, although I've cut out a lot of these. I'll be doing another tutorial on projects you can make with this kit, the Bouquet of Hope kit. Alternative projects, the cards itself. Okay, this is Stamping Block E. But of course you can use whatever stamping block you have. I'm just mounting the photopolymer stamp onto the stamping block. Now I'm going to use Memento Black ink. The reason I use Memento Black ink, not just for this project, but for many of the things I do, unless I'm watercoloring, is I'm going to be using the Stampin Blends. The Stampin Blends are alcohol markers. This ink is not going to run when I use Stampin Blends. However, I didn't have all the colors, the coordinating colors of Stampin Blends. I'll talk about coordinating colors later when I color, but I didn't have all the colors, so I'm using also markers. This also doesn't run when you use the Stampin Up markers. This is a really nice ink that's good for coloring with markers or alcohol or blends. And you'll see what the differences are and why I chose the colors I did, and we'll get to that. So I'm going to ink that up real good. Because this is bigger, see the ink pad is this size. My stamp is bigger than the ink pad. Therefore, I'm not going to turn this around and try to ink it up this way. Right? Because it doesn't cover it. I want to get good coverage, so I ink it up that way. I look at it, I hold it up, I see that it's shiny and I have good coverage. And then I put my silicone mat down. This is a silicone mat, just to make my table flat. And I'm going to put that down. And I'm going to put the piece of paper on top of it. Use basic white cardstock. It's just our standard cardstock. It's the regular one, the thinner one, where you get 40 sheets in a pack. Not the one where you get 24 in a pack. That's the thick cardstock. You can use that to cut out stamped images, but I say the thicker one's a waste to use let's go ahead and do one more, is because I'm going to use the thicker white cardstock for when I make cards, but the regular basic white cardstock for when I'm cutting out stamped images. It's just way easier. Okay, I'm tap, tap, tap. And I always, when I do my tutorials, I like to do more than one, just in case one doesn't come out. You know, every time things could come out differently. So I had pretty good success rate, but just in case, we're going to stamp it twice. You get different results every time you use your Scan and Cut. You know, it could be different parts of the mat or different parts of your scanner, read different images differently on different parts of your mat. It could be the stamped image we didn't enclose it all with the pencil trick. I mean, there's many reasons. So I just stamp it twice for good measure. So now we're going to take, I showed you what this image looks like. Now we're going to go ahead and do this with a pencil. And I'll bring it closer to the camera too. So let's just talk about my bouquet. Let me show you what our result we're going for. Here's the result we're going for. Cutting out stamped images with your Scan and Cut. You might not be a Paper Pumpkin subscriber because it's only in US and Canada that you can subscribe to Paper Pumpkin. But the encouraging thing is, if you're in any of our Stampin' Up markets, this is going to turn into an international kit. I know that because these stickers are in French and German and English inside our kit. So I'm like, yay, another international kit. And the instructions are in different languages. So it will be international. But if you're another part of the world and you want to watch this tutorial and learn the pencil trick, use whatever stamped images you have. In other words, you don't need this kit to follow along with this concept. So I'm taking my pencil. Everybody asks me, what kind of pencil? It doesn't work. I'm trying it. What? You have a special magic pencil? No, I don't. You just go to Staples or an office supply store and you buy a pencil. It's a number 2 pencil. There's not a trick pencil. It's just it's a number 2 pencil. Use any pencil. But don't erase with the pink eraser. You want to erase with a white eraser. I'll link to those in the description because you don't want to get stains on yours when you erase later. But I'm putting little pencil marks. I'm connecting. Okay, I'm tricking this Scan and Cut. I'm going to trick it into thinking this is one giant image. So I'm just connecting around the outsides. Don't go connecting around this outside. Don't go connecting up there because look, I like how it goes inside there. See, it's pretty cool how it goes down and around and around. So if I connect up here, if I connect the lines up there, then it's just going to go around like a hump. I want it to go down in there. Oops, I connected it actually too high. I didn't need to connect that one. So for this one, I'm not going to connect that one. That one's already, maybe I can connect it down here. In other words, if you don't connect it, it'll go down and around inside there. So the deeper down inside there you go, a little bit better because then it can go around when it cuts. And like I said, each time I did this, it came out differently. I connected them in different ways. Sometimes I forgot to connect them and it still worked in some of them cases where I didn't connect all the lines. So I think I have it all. See, so let me just focus that so you can see. See what I mean? I have all the lines connected there, all around, because if not, this little clump would have been an island. It would have tried to break off from the rest. It wasn't surrounded and enclosed. Don't worry about any of these internal lines because we're only scanning and cut. We're going to be using direct cut and cutting out the actual bouquet itself like this. So you don't really need to, and I actually have a piece of paper to put on there as contrast here. You don't really need to worry that all these lines inside are not connected. You don't need to worry about that because all you need to worry about is the outer lines when you're using the pencil trick. And let's see about, I didn't finish this one. So I just wanted to show you that close up. Now I'm going to finish this one. Connect, connect, connect. And this goes quick. And of course you're going to cut out a page of stamped images all at once. It's not like you're going to do this one time, stamp it, do it again, cut it out. You're going to stamp a whole page, all right? And you're going to cut out a whole page. I think I have it all. Oops, there's one little bit. So I'm happy with this. And of course, if I don't have it all, you're going to be able to tell, and you can, before you actually cut, you're going to be able to tell, and you're going to be able to change your settings. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide my machine closer. I hopefully don't have to change the camera angle too much because I already have my mat loaded. I didn't want anything to fall off my table. I'm just limited in space because I'm actually working on a course right now. If you're interested in my courses, I'll have a link in the description. I teach a lot of Scan and Cut courses. The next course I'm working on right now is called Boxes and Envelopes, and I have a lot of stuff on my table here. working on boxes and envelopes course for the Scan and Cut. But the thing is, I get the paper pumpkin kit and all bets are off. I drop everything I'm doing when I get a paper pumpkin kit. I get all this crafty mojo and I just want to create all kinds of things with it. And like, even though I'm working on this other major project, I'm like, oh, my kit is here. How fun, right? And then I just start doing it and drop everything else. So I'm going to hit the home button. You can't see what I'm doing yet because I have to change. I do have to change my angle of the camera a little bit. So here we go. You're going to turn on your machine. You're going to see pattern and scan. Now, if you were, let me go ahead and turn off my overhead light because we don't need it anymore for scanning. Now, if you were to load your mat, which I've already loaded my mat, because remember I told you I didn't want my mat to fall off the table. I loaded my mat with this button here. Okay, so that's how, this button here is how you load your mat. So now my mat's loaded and I put a piece of paper on my mat. You can put the paper anywhere you want on your mat. I put it on the top right. When you turn on your machine in the SDX models, you're going to see pattern and scan. We want to use the scan because that's what the great thing about the Scan and Cut, right, is scan. We want to use scan and we want to directly cut these flower bouquets out. So we're going to use direct cut. Okay, now it's asking where do you want to temporarily store the data. I am wirelessly connected. I could store it temporarily up on the cloud in my account, but there's no reason for that. I'm just going to temporarily store it on the machine, and it's just an easy setting, and it doesn't really matter where you store it. Now I did put 2 bouquets up at the top of the paper, so I'm going to go ahead and change this to scan area is 12 by 6. If you have an older model machine, you won't get to change your scan area, but it doesn't really matter. This just saves you a little time. It only has to scan the top half of the mat. Now, even if this bouquet was colored, which it's not, I would still use black and white recognition mode. Always use black and white recognition mode because you have good contrast between the foreground and the background. I would never color a stamped image. I hardly ever color. There's a few times I do color stamped images before I cut them, but not all stamped images cut out, and for many reasons I color them after I cut them out. But even if they were colored, I would still use black and white recognition mode because of the good contrast. So now we have those settings set up. All other settings are default values. How do you know what the default values are? In the settings, well, actually in a minute, let's just say start. When we get to the cut in the settings, you're going to actually be able to see that the default values have a little square rectangle around them, and it lets you see what the default settings are. When I'm cutting paper like this, basic white cardstock, I just use I leave all their settings at their default values. Okay, so now what it's done is it scanned the top half of the mat, and you're going to see that my mat is kind of dirty over here, which is fine, and I will show you how to avoid that and just get into this bouquets. Okay, so great job. It did a great job, and it's actually got in there, and it's actually got some of the sticks, or I guess what do they call it? Twigs, whatever. No, stems. I have to amuse myself sometimes. These are little stems. It got in there and it got the stems of the flowers. When you ignore small objects, it'll sort of make this image easier to cut out. But let's first avoid the dirt on my mat. So we want to just get the stamped images. So the 3 ways to kind of get the stamped images is first you're going to ignore the bits by just making a selection around what you want to scan in and cut. That's the first way. The other way to get rid of any unwanted bits, like these middle stems, is going to be ignore object size. We're going to ignore object size and keep moving up. Now you want to ignore small objects, but don't go too high on this number because you don't want to ignore the very thing you're trying to scan in. I see that there's a little clump in the inside of that one. Hopefully when I use the outline distance, it'll get rid of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and ignore any small bits up to a 1/2 inch for now. And the third way to get rid of things is if you were to go into edit mode, you can actually trash any items any lines that are scanned in that you don't want. So let's go ahead and we're going to do this outline distance. By doing the outline distance, it should get rid of that little clump in the middle. Plunk. Is that even a word? Oh yeah, it is a word. It's kind of like plop. But anyway, you're going to get rid of this little plunk. Oh, I'm now doing it again. Clump in the middle, right? When you do this outline distance. See? It gets rid of that bit in the middle there. And so I want an outline distance of 0.04. Okay, 0.04 is a good outline distance. And I see that I still have an extra line that got selected. So we're going to go and get that edit, and we're going to get rid of that line. See that line? I just went to select See how I went to the select? I'm just toggling between the items selected, and I'm going to trash that extra line. Okay, I think this one's going to be perfect. This one got right up in there, up into the bow. I think it should be still fine. But these two should look like they're nice clumps of flowers, nice bouquets. They're nice. I like the jagged edges. You want jagged edges because it's showing that it looks like you spent all this time cutting with your scissors, right, all around the object. And I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to click Cut. Now the settings I told you about are at their default values. I'm going to go into the settings, and you can see that their default values because they have a black square or a black rectangle around them. As if you were to change any values, then the black square disappears. But leave them all at their default. If you're using a CM model right now and not an SDX, you're going to have to set the blade depth. I don't have to set the blade depth because I'm using an SDX model. There is no blade depth to set. There are no numbers on this blade. It's an auto blade. It's an automatic blade. It determines the depth it needs to go. But if you're using a CM model and you're cutting basic white cardstock, just use a blade depth of 4. I'm going to go ahead and click Start. That'll all be in the description of this video when I get to the description. Sometimes it takes me a week or so to get to that description. But even if the video is published right away, I don't always get to write the description right away. But as you see, if you're subscribed to my blog on thepaperedchef.com, then you will see that I have description. As I publish my blog, I have my descriptions already. So sometimes I get done in a day, sometimes I get done in a week. Okay, the alignment's a little bit off, but no problem, because you're going to get to see. I mean, it's pretty good. Pretty good. I just would say I'm going to show you how to fix the alignment as well. I mean, I could show you how we would fix it. That's another tips and tricks video. I have lots of videos on that. So I've been cutting so many things that my alignment is a little bit off. All right, so good. So now we're finished cutting, and we click OK. And I'll get back to the alignment issue in just a second, and I'm just gonna show you where you would fix that, but not go fully through with that. But this is what you do to remove the images from your mat. Okay, you're gonna take your paper off. Now, if you have a new Scan and Cut, I get asked all the time, what do you do when you first have a Scan and Cut? How do you condition your mat? This is not a good project for when you first get a Scan and Cut. This is not good paper to use on a new Scan and Cut. It gets stuck. You end up having to wash your mat in the sink with warm soapy water and Dawn dishwashing liquid or something to try to get the paper off. This paper is somewhat fibrous. It's not too fibrous, but it's fibrous. If you have a new Scan and Cut and you're cutting projects, I would recommend, starting with designer series paper, something with very low fiber count. Do the project that came with your Scan and Cut. Do the welcome project. Do other things. Don't start with this kind of project, right? Because it's this kind of project you could get a lot of fiber stuck on your mat. And I can show you, like earlier, I had to clean out my blade because I had all these fibers in it. Every time I cut these, I started, having to clean out my blade holder. That's with a sticky mat. But you can imagine if I had a new mat. I mean, I restuck this mat, but sometimes the mats, when you first get them, they're either too sticky, or then you have to use them a couple times, and then you're like, well, they lost their sticky. But anyway, it's another whole story. I don't want to digress. Okay, so here are the bouquets. They came out beautifully. I really like them, but I see that there's a little bit of an issue, and only because I've been cutting these for a while. You could see I have a huge pile of these already that I'm going to be coloring, and these earlier came out pretty perfect, and then of course I do my tutorial, and the alignment's a little bit off. It's no big deal. This is what you want, though. You want exact amount of white space around the whole thing. You want the same amount of white space around the whole bouquet. And if you notice, there's more white space on the left side than there is on the right side, just slightly. Not a big deal, but I'm going to show you how to fix that, and then I want to show you how to color these a little bit. I'm not going to color a whole one. I'm going to show you what colors I used, how I colored them, and maybe I'll do the whole coloring technique in an Ink It Up tutorial in the future. I have an Ink It Up series where I talk about techniques more, but I definitely want to show you how I colored this before I show you my project that I created with it. So let's go to the machine. That's all for cutting stamped images. We'll erase that. We'll do some coloring, but that's how you do it. Then you would remove your mat, right? That's all you need to do. You cut stamped images. You use the pencil trick. You erase the pencil marks. It's that easy. You don't have to use scissors. I mean, Oh, how fun is that? All right, so now let's go. Let's say you want to align your machine to make sure that the white space is even. So we're going to click on the home button, click OK, and you're going to go to the settings of your machine, and you're going to click in there, and you're going to go down to the one called Scanning Cutting Position Adjustment. And we're not going to do that right now, but I have tutorials on it on how to do this with the CM350 and the SDX125. But bottom line is you're going to take your mat, you're going to put a piece of white cardstock in your mat, and you're going to load the mat, and you're going to let it adjust the scanning cutting position adjustment. It's going to create little crosshairs. It's going to scan those back in, and it's going to do some adjustments, and you're going to have to do it probably 4 or 5 times before it's the way you want it. And I will be doing that again right after this tutorial. It could be a few things though. The reason it might not have worked on mine, it could be like my mat buckled a little bit. It could be my mat slipped a little bit. I mean, there's many reasons it needs to be adjusted. So let's take, in other words, even though it just worked 5 minutes before this tutorial that I'm recording, it doesn't mean it works the next 5 minutes later. So what I'm saying is you have to adjust it sometimes. You have to do some adjustments often. So I'm going to take my silicone mat and I'm going to put these images on there that we cut out. So I'm just going to talk about erasing, and I do have electronic eraser too, but I'm just going to use just my manual eraser. Let me go and turn back on my light. My manual eraser. Listen to me, manual. The old school eraser, as opposed to my electronic eraser. So what you want to do is if you use the red eraser, then you're going to end up with like red stains on your stamped image. Hold it while you rub, because you want to make sure that it doesn't buckle. And I know my camera's shaking, but you're going to erase all those marks. And then my little tip for, make sure you clean up your little eraser marks before you start coloring, because then otherwise they start getting caught in your coloring and you're like, why is my pink flower have a little spot in the middle of it? It's because a little eraser mark got in the middle when you're trying to color. So I'm erasing all the marks, and you can't even tell they were there, especially after you color your bouquet. It's going to be gorgeous. So what I do is I take painter's tape, and that's how I clean up my mat, because before I start coloring, because I don't want to get like these little eraser things into my coloring. Okay, so beautiful. So now we have that done, and now we're going to do some coloring. So let me pull out my blends and talk about coordinating colors, and talk about why I chose these colors and things like that. So here are my Stampin Blends. All right. Let's see. Where's the directions? Here are okay. In the directions, in the instructions of this kit, on the back, when you get your paper pumpkin kit, it tells you the coordinating colors. Basic black, bumblebee, just jade, merry merlot, mossy meadow, rococo rose. So I go and I gather my inks and things, and that's how I came up with these. So I used this, I kind of used this a little bit as an inspiration. I said, oh, this would be nice to make my big flowers rococo rose. I didn't make my other big flowers yellow only because I don't actually have a yellow or bumblebee, because at bumblebee, I don't have bumblebee blends. I have Daffodil Delight blends, but I don't have bumblebee blends. And this is a different shade of yellow. So for that one, I start with the marker. Okay, and then I started with the marker. Let's use, this one has the pencil marks on it still. We'll just use this one. Actually, here, we'll use this one that I erased this one earlier, and this one has a little bit, or is it that one? Oh, it doesn't matter. All right, so we'll go ahead and use. We're gonna take bumblebee, and we're gonna take all these little dots, these little inside of the flowers, and what I did is I colored them with the marker. The Stampin' markers and the Stampin' Blends have a thin side and a brush tip. They all have that. But the thinnest, the tiniest dots in the world can be done with the marker, not the blends. So I went in the inside of all the flowers. So when you do your coloring, do all the same color at once. Do all the insides of the flowers, or whatever. This is how I did it. I'm saying you start with your lightest color, and I did all my bumblebee inside of the dots. And if you forget them, of course, go back later, but you want to start with your lightest color. Okay, so that's how I did it. I always like to bring this up here. Sorry, let me focus this so you can see that. Okay, so bumblebee, do all the dots. Okay, let me focus back. Now we're going to take Just Jade. That's what I did. And I took the Just Jade. These are the alcohol markers now. These are the thicker ones. These are the blends, not the markers. And I took the Just Jade and I took the, this is just there. This is a Just Jade marker in case I need to get even thinner, in case I need to get more detail with the Just Jade. That's why I have the marker there. That's why I have another one. Because it might even be better and more detailed. Like the marker has a finer tip even than the Stampin' Blends. But what I did for the Just Jade is I just did a bunch of these leaves on the outside in the darker Just Jade, and I did some in the lighter Just Jade. And you're like, well, Paper Chef, aren't these blending brushes? Shouldn't you be using 2 colors? Well, no, you know what? They're blending brushes, but you don't want to blend something in such a tiny area like that, right? It's too small to blend. So what I did is I colored some in dark and some light, and that's how I did the little leaves all around. Okay, I'm not doing them all. I'm trying to give you an idea of how I did all this. Okay, so I did some. Okay, I did some Just Jade light and some Just Jade dark, and that's how I did a little bit less light there. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, so I don't have to keep lifting that up, because if I zoom in, I don't have to keep lifting up my paper and making you dizzy. So now I'm going to show you. So now that's the Just Jade. So then I did the Mossy Meadow, and I took the Mossy Meadow dark. This is the dark one, and I took the thin side. Ooh, hello. Marker came open. It happens sometimes. Okay, come on. Giving me a hard time today. It's like the marker won't come off. The cap won't come off. This is when you use brute force. No, we use our silicone. I can't believe my marker lid won't come off. Like, there we go. But see how the silicone mat helped me. This is the only time I refill them. It's the only time I refresh them is when my lids come off or my insides come out by accident. Then I go, oh, it's a good time to refresh my marker. I put a couple drops of alcohol in there because they came popping off anyway. But I usually don't refill them. I usually just give them away, and I get new ones when they go dead because it's just easier for me. So what I'm doing now is I'm coloring the Mossy Meadow. I'm coloring the leaves, like around the outside. See how these are big areas? So I can do that. Now you don't want to color too many leaves, because when alcohol markers dry quickly, then they get hard, the colors get harsh, and it's hard to blend them. This paper is very suitable for blending colors, but not if you sit and let it dry. So I wouldn't do all the outsides of these. I would do, although I do color in stages, I would color the inside with the light Mossy Meadow right away. Okay, color the light with the Mossy Meadow right away. And I'm just using the light side of the Mossy Meadow, but the thin side, because then the colors blend and they're not so harsh. But if you were to color all the outsides and then wait a while and color the insides, the colors won't blend together and you'll have harsh contrast. So there, whenever you get a big area, that's when I use the alcohol markers to blend them. But for the small areas, I use the little markers. Okay, so that's the technique. And like I said, I'll probably do this again on my Ink It Up series, where I talk about coloring. All right, so now, if not this, I'll do something similar with other things. So now we'll talk about the big flowers. We'll do these big flowers in Rococo Rose. So when you're blending, you always want to start with the dark, like you saw me do with the Mossy Meadow. You want to do the dark on the inside. I mean, on the outside, sorry. So on the outside. So my friend Sally taught me how to blend, and you always kind of start with the darker color. And I'm just going around the Rococo Rose. Again, coordinating color. I'm going around the outside of the flower. I'm doing all the big flowers this way. Not all the big flowers, just the big ones. This big flower, like not this little daisy looking flower, or I don't know what we call that. Not the little flower with the petals. I'm also coloring the inside dark because I just have the fine tip open and I just sort of the inside dark. Now I want to fill in all the rest with light. I color the lines. So just so you see that, I'll do it one more time with this flower. I'll do this flower the same way. So I'm just doing dark around the outside, and you can see how this is a thin, even though it's the thin side of the marker, it's still pretty thick compared to the actual marker. This is pretty thick. All right, so there you go. Now we're going to take the light Rococo Rose, and we're going to take the brush tip. Well, it doesn't matter if it's the brush tip. Actually, we can use the thin side. It doesn't matter because what we're doing is we're getting the light Rococo Rose to blend in there. The brush tip, my brush tip was a little frayed because I use it so much it was frayed, because I think there was another paper pumpkin kit recently. See, it has a lot of fray on it. That had a nice rose that I did Rococo Rose for. I don't know about recently, but I've only had one set of this Rococo Rose, and it's actually my least favorite color of pink, but it looks so great with this. I know that other people that I send things to, like my friend Mona, my mom loves pink. I know other people love pink and I send it to them, but to me, this is not my happy pink. I have a happier pink I like. But this is really nice with these flowers. But anyway, it's the only marker I've ever got, and I've colored so many flowers with it. It's the only one. I haven't had to replace this set of blends. That's how long they last me. All right, so where was I? I was on the, now we're on the Mary Merlot. So now we have another one more technique. The other technique is this. So you have a marker, and because Mary Merlot we don't make blends. We don't make Mary Merlot blends. Stampin' Up doesn't, okay? I will have a link to all the blends I'm using. So instead, I took the marker and make sure I get my light. My light's went a little crazy on me, sorry. Took the marker and I just used the marker to color in the bow. And so what I did is, I think I used the thick side, or the brush side, the brush side. And you can either color, so you want to color the bow in two parts. So you can color the front of the bow dark or the back of the bow dark. I did it both ways and it really didn't matter. When I say dark, I mean straight on ink. The front of the bow. You see how the bow is like 3D bow? So if you want to do the front of the bow in one shade of Mary Merlot, and you do the back of the bow in another shade of Mary Merlot, and you're like, well, what do you mean by shades? Well, I'm going to show you another technique. So that's what, since we did that part of the bow, we're going to do the bottom of this bow. Okay, so you can buy our markers in a set of 10 that go with the color collection, like the Regals color collection, or the Neutrals color collection, or the Subtles, or the Brights. But you can also get a whole giant set of markers and have all the colors, all 60 colors, which I happen to have all the colors and markers. So here's the trick. This is the beauty. This is called a blender pen. It has some secret sauce in it. I don't know what's in it. Somebody probably knows what's in it. I mean, it's not like it's a secret what's in it. I'm saying I just don't know what's in it. It's some kind of, maybe it says it. Here, let's see if there's any warning, choking hazard. Made in Japan. I never read these contents before. Oh, here it is, xylene free, acid free. Doesn't say what's in it here. But I know there's it's a really neat little blending solution. And so what you do is you take your ink. I'm going to open up the Mary Merlot. Okay, I could have just dipped right into my marker, but instead I'm going to dip right into the ink pad. Okay, so I'm going to dip right into the ink pad. So these do get stained, these little blending brushes, and I was just using this recently. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how I would color this right by dipping straight into it, and it will be lighter than using the marker directly. So I'm dipping in there, and I'm using the blending brush, and this lasts for a while. Okay, pretty cool, right? And I can use, there's also a thinner side for this too. In fact, that might be the side I should be using right now. Yep. Or, I don't know about thinner, but just not as frayed. Okay, good. And so I'm dipping in there, and you see, so you can get the whole, you can kind of do the alcohol marker blending technique without having alcohol markers. I mean, sort of, you can blend, using the blending brush, you can get different shades of colors, just like you can achieve with the alcohol markers, I should say. And these blending brushes come in a set of 3, and the blending brushes are not something I refill. I mean, I don't think you can open them to get to that special sauce. You just get new ones, but I've used them for years, and I have a few sets of them, and they do get stained, but when you're done with them, you just sort of, okay, and I just sort of rub them off. So you get a piece of paper here, and you just rub it off. But I'm not really done with it yet, but you just rub it off. But I used it to color these little flowers up here. That was the last thing I wanted to show you, is I used it to color the flowers. And because it gets lighter as you color, you can keep refilling it. Or what I did is I just did every other petal, like this, and then I went back and did the in-between petals, and it made it look like dark light, dark light. because it got lighter as I colored. But I kind of left it like that, dark light, petals. It was just something fun. It came out. So what I would do is I would sit and watch TV, and I would color all my flowers. Well, I'd color all the leaves, and then I'd color all the flowers, and then I'd do... So I will be, before my Paper Pumpkin video, you can watch out for in the next day or two. I mean, because I've done started thinking about a lot of projects. I'm going to be coloring some of these flowers. And I will have more of these little embellishments done, and I will put them on my little boxes and projects. See how they come out dark, lighter? And then if I dip, it comes out darker, the petals. See, so I just was kind of doing that to my flowers. I know I said I was only going to color one, but you know what? You sometimes can't stop when you start coloring. It's like, I know I'm recording, but you know what? I got to finish coloring this flower. So I used Mary Merlot for the flowers, Bumblebee for the inside, Mossy Meadow, and Just Jade for all the leaves. And that's how I colored them. And then when you're all done with the blending pen, the blender pen, it's called a blending pen, blender pen, you just rub this off to get rid of that stuff. And then don't worry that it gets stained. They all get stained, no big deal. Put the lid back on and use it again later. So that's, like I said, you can use this for inspiration for your coloring, which is beautiful. And you can do what's called no line coloring if you want. Let me go ahead and close this and then show you my project. No line coloring is like you would just sort of color some really faint. Instead of using basic black to do your outline of your bouquet, like I used basic black. What's it called? Oh, Memento Black. Okay, instead of using Memento Black when you stamped, you could have stamped in really faint light color, and then you could have colored these, and you'd get more of this sort of this effect that you get from the embellishment on your bouquet. Okay, so I really like the bouquet. Totally think it's going to be great for sympathy cards, and it also shows somebody you really care and that you took the time to color that for them. So here's how it looks when you put it together with a project. Here's my finished project, and you can see how the colors blend better when they dry. So to create this, I used just pieces from the Paper Pumpkin kit, and this is what we call an alternative Paper Pumpkin project. Alternative meaning it's not just like the one, oh, I can zoom back out now, sorry. It's not like the one that you see in the instructions necessarily, okay? So this is what you'd see in the instructions, and then this is an alternative Paper Pumpkin project, but using the pieces from the kit. So what I did is I used the envelope liner. This is the envelope liner for this card. So that's Bumblebee, and you get that piece of Designer Series paper from the envelope liner. I took a piece of this card here, the back of the card, just Mary Merlot, popped it up with that little outline of a 1/8 of an inch. I used Mary Merlot for the sentiment, I'll always be here for you. So this makes a good sympathy card, or it makes a good just friendship card. I colored Mossy Meadow, Rococo Rose, Just Jade, Mary Merlot, Bumblebee. You saw how I colored the bouquet. And then I added Winkostella. Where's the Winkostella? It's a glitter pen. Here we go. Glitter brush. You brush over your flowers when you're done, and it makes a nice... Can you see that? I hope you can see that. Let me focus that. See that glitter on there? That's how I did the bouquet. I used pieces of the envelopes here. A little piece of this envelope, Rococo Rose. A little piece of that envelope, Mossy Meadow. I used the sentiment that came in the kit. I'll always be here for you. Instead of using Mossy Meadow ink spot that came in the kit, I instead stamped the sentiment in Mary Merlot because I thought that'd be better because I'm already putting it on I wanted to use Mary Merlot because there's Mossy Meadow right there, and I wanted the colors to kind of pop. Okay, lastly, I used sequins that came in the kit. You're going to see in my Paper Pumpkin video the different embellishments that come in this kit. There's lots of fantastic embellishments. Then finally, I put it on a Just Jade basic cardstock. This is my own cardstock, Stampin Up cardstock, dyed all the way through. I used Just Jade for the cardstock. Now, I didn't put the sentiment inside yet because I'm deciding if it's going to be a sympathy card, right? I would use this sentiment here. Sharing in your sorrow, thinking of you, and wishing I could be there to hold your hand. If it's a sympathy card, I'd put that in the inside of the card. If it's a birthday card, I could put, I'll always be here for you. I could put happy birthday inside. Or I'll always be here for you, thank you, or you're a great friend. So there's so many things you can put in the inside of this card, and that's why it's blank inside. I didn't even put the white paper yet, the white cardstock yet, because I have to figure out what sentiment I'll be using for this card. So I like this design, and I'm going to be making more of this design because I think the flowers, that's all you need. Is what my point is. That's all you need for the flowers. The flowers are good for sympathy. They're good for friendship cards. Okay, so make yourself a lot of these. And I wanted to just say that this paper pumpkin kit is great, and it has great flowers, and we use the Stampin' Up kit, Bouquet of Hope, but there's also a Stampin' Up paper pumpkin kit that you also have a cute little bouquet of flowers for, that you don't have to use the pencil trick fuller for, and that is, should be right here. It's the one with the bear, berry comforting. So the berry comforting paper pumpkin kit, here we go. I have this little kit that came in, see what month this was. Berry comforting, December 2020. I knew it was recent. So there's bears and there's stamps in there. So I used that stamp. I stamped it with the black Memento Black, and I'm going to be adding these, not to this one, but to some of my cards. Maybe I'm going to be adding these embellishments, and you can just see how fun those are and how well these go together with this kit here. So you have the berry, and you don't need any pencil trick because there's no line. The lines were already there. You just stamp them and they punch right out. I mean, not punch, they cut right out. So that's all for now. Stay tuned for my paper pumpkin project video that I'll be publishing soon on projects you can create with the Bouquet of Hope paper pumpkin kit, where I'll show you many alternative projects after I get done coloring, cutting, embellishing, and doing things with this kit. That's all for now. This is the Paper Chef, and we'll see you next time.